Grandpa's Journal, Episode 5, More Like a Sailor. The month of October sailed swiftly by as we worked diligently to become assimilated into our new home. Becoming a functioning member of a new household is a tremendous blessing and a formidable task. Early on, my brother and I were versed in a few ground rules. First and foremost, we were cautioned to steer a wide berth around my uncle's leather-bound testament. Among Uncle Gus's many treasures was one of the first collections of scripture printed in the colonies. Back in 1724, Christopher Sauer, the Casebeer family, and a number of other pilgrims from the Church of the Brethren arrived in Philadelphia from back home in Germany. They'd barely gotten their land legs when the little band of believers found themselves at odds with the local parishioners because of the Brethren's infuriating adherence to Christ's principles of nonviolence and their exasperating advocacy for the country's long-suffering Native Americans. Mercy and tolerance may be fine for Christ, but they chafe polite society. Around 1738, Brother Christoph gets this care package from Germany, and in this shipment is a dandy printing outfit. Well, Mr. Sauer goes to printing flyers and biblical scripture in German and ticks off the local printer. Old Ben Franklin, a pretty competent printer himself, was not amused by the sudden competition, particularly from what he considered the alarmingly virulent German portion of Pennsylvania's populace. But he was way too busy entertaining the ladies and drafting declarations and flying kites and such to pursue his objections with his usual gusto, so Mr. Sauer's print shop flourished. Uncle Gus's prized volume occupied a place of reverence on top of his roll-top desk for use during our times of study and devotion, and we kids were under strict orders not to molest the hoary old manuscript on pain of death and dismemberment. If a lightning bolt didn't dispatch us, Uncle Gus would. Despite this terrible temptation, we gradually settled into a routine and found ways of becoming productive members of our new extended family. Christoph bonded quickly with Klaus and was invited to accompany him to the shop and observe the art of shoemaking. Christoph has always been good with his hands, and in a short time he developed into a remarkably competent cobbler. Mother assisted the women of the house with myriad household duties and applied herself liberally toward assisting Irving's wife, Kathleen, with tutelage of the children. Father soon settled into his usual routine of rising each morning at 4 o'clock. Most mornings he and Uncle Gus were on their second pot of coffee before the rest of us had begun to stir. Gus was acting ramrod of the operation, and Father settled in handily as his assistant. The two of them would discuss the day's activities and then assign each of us our tailboard as we arrived for breakfast. I began each day by rolling out at 6 o'clock and assisting with morning chores. Breakfast was at 7, followed by 4 hours of homeschooling. Lunch break was at 12 sharp, and I finished up my workday with 4 or 5 hours of what Irving liked to call the duties of a mule skinner's apprentice. The bulk of those duties consisted of cleaning stalls. If you are not familiar with cleaning mule stalls, count your blessings. I'll spare you the details, but suffice it to say, it's a thankless and never-ending task that deals mainly with the removal of animal excrement. Most of my daily routine centered on the subject of mules, and I was knee-deep in the subject the majority of the time. Mule skinner is the term used to describe the driver, trainer, or handler who provides direction to the mules. This task is greatly exacerbated by the mule's natural inclination to provide their own direction. The ranch maintained a remuda of 20 to 25 mares or female horses and a cantankerous band of half a dozen male donkeys or jacks. Crossbreeding the female horses with the male donkeys produced mules. On a good year, the mares produced 15 to 20 mules that are then trained and marketed the following year. Well-trained mules are always in high demand, and bring high dollar when properly marketed. Between fence mending, pasture improvements, birthing, grooming, training, marketing, and my all-time favorite, stall cleaning, caring for the mules is a never-ending chore. November 17th marked the 10th anniversary of my birth. The day was much like any other until we'd completed our workday and finished dinner. After dinner, we were all summoned to the huge fireplace at the south end of the dining room. The grown-ups quickly commandeered the few chairs, and we kids joined excitedly in an unappreciated skirmish as we all competed rowdily for the throw pillows. Eventually, Klaus casually applied his knuckle to the top of several craniums, and we formed ranks peacefully on the floor. Calm being established, Uncle Gus hoisted a cast-iron Dutch oven from the coals, removed the black coal-covered lid, and began serving up steaming hot apple dumplings. Irving made a mad dash for the spring house, tying his old record-breaking time of 2.5 minutes, and returned with a pewter pitcher of thick cream that had been skimmed from the morning's milk. Apple dumplings with thick cream in front of a crackling fire. Life doesn't get any better than that. Within a few minutes, Klaus had licked clean his bowl of dumplings and dashed from the room. He returned, moments later, grinning like a possum and toting a canvas sack. I was evidently the only one not in on this surprise, and the entire family beamed with excitement. They all sang a German birthday ditty as Klaus handed me the mystery sack. I held the sack closed for a moment, embarrassed by being suddenly the center of attention, and then I dumped its contents out on the floor and gazed excitedly at a brand new pair of black, polished leather cowboy boots. "Try 'em on," Klaus prompted enthusiastically. "Those don't look like a mule skinner's boots to me." Father smiled and handed me a pair of wool stockings that Mother had darned for the occasion, and I sprawled on the floor and fought feverishly to remove a knot from the sinew laces of the old shoes that had served as my only footwear since leaving Germany. I slipped into my new socks amidst howls of laughter, while the other kids held their noses and rolled on the floor, feigning agony and laughing hysterically. I tugged at each boot until it slipped snugly into place, tucked in my trouser legs, and headed out boldly with the expectation of sauntering rakishly across the room. Needless to say, the response was immediate and unrestrained when my first step rendered me spraddle-legged in a big heap on the floor. Struggling quickly to my feet and feigning indifference to the deafening jocularity, I fought for balance and headed out again. The high tops were initially bothersome, and it was some time before I grew accustomed to the dizzying altitude afforded by the 2-inch underslung heels. But persistence paid off, and eventually I was able to negotiate the room with a jaunty gait reminiscent of a hatchling colt. "Well, geez Louise," exclaimed Irving, shaking his head and feigning annoyance. "Those are supposed to be farmhand boots, and you walk more like a sailor than ever."